Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KBPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Monday, October 21st. I'm Jonathan Linden in for Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, a pest called the navel orangeworm has had a big impact on the almond industry, killing nearly 4% of California's almonds last year. Researchers are developing a new way to fight the pest, using radiation.
This is potentially a way to control navel orangeworm without them being born in the first place.
We'll hear more specifics in just a few minutes, but first, today's headlines. A 300-mile march through the Central Valley by the people of the Sikh faith is about halfway to the capital. Today, the march will reach Merced. The effort is calling for recognition of a massacre of Sikhs in India in 1984. But it's also calling attention to possible political repression that has been felt within the community. State Assembly member Esmeralda Soria joined the march in Fresno and said she is pushing for protections.
I want to tell you that I am with you all, that I join you guys not only in this march, that I join you guys in the fight to have freedom here in this country that is our country.
California has the third largest population of Sikhs outside of India. King County has reported 2 cases of bird flu among dairy workers. That's as the state's Department of Public Health says statewide it has confirmed 13 cases. Tulare County was the first to record human cases. The illness is present in at least 124 dairy farms. Officials with the California Department of Food and Agriculture say they are conducting aggressive monitoring of the virus. Merced County officials are warning the public that fake letters are being circulated in the community. The letters claim to advise those who receive them that they have tested positive for sexually transmitted infections such as HIV and syphilis. Merced County says the letters are fake and that the county does not release private information in that manner. They also noted that the printed letterhead is counterfeit. Officials haven't figured out where the letters have come from. Members of the Picayune Rancheria of Chuchansi Indians say they are unjustly being disenrolled from the tribe. Former tribal members highlighted their concerns over the weekend during a protest march. They walked along Highway 41 near the Chuchansi Casino in Corsgold. Former tribe members told TV outlet KC24 that disenrollment has led to financial hardship. Being part of the tribe makes them eligible for payments. Former members also worry about their children losing their heritage. Inmates at Valley State Prison dressed in something other than prison uniforms last Friday. KVPR's Rachel Livenall reports on the special reason they wore caps and gowns.
You are now Fresno State alumni for life!
23 tassels moved from one side to another as nearly 24 inmates completed a bachelor's degree. It's part of a program called Degrees for Change, created 2 years ago. The Valley State Prison inmates, now Fresno State alumni, all majored in social science. Here's Henry Inocencio on what this could mean for him.
Lifers go home today. You have an opportunity to go in front of the board and be found suitable.
J.J. Lewis became the first in his family to obtain a 4-year degree.
Kind of just put it on the back burner. So it was something that was been itching at me for a long time.
Officials hope this keeps formerly incarcerated people from reoffending. Some graduates say they now plan to continue their studies. For KVPR News, I'm Rachel Livenall.
Nearly $100 million in federal funding has been issued to widen Highway 99 through the city of Tulare. The Tulare County Association of Governments announced the funding on Friday. The project will add 2 lanes along a 5-mile stretch through the city. Public officials say it would reduce congestion and improve safety for drivers. Construction is set to begin in the winter of 2027 and be completed by the fall of 2029. Overall, the project is estimated to cost upwards of $160 million.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, a member of the Prieto Automotive family, celebrating the grand opening of the newly renovated showroom on Thursday, October 24th. This all-ages event features live music, refreshments, and a gift for the first 100 guests. myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. Every year, a pest known as the navel orangeworm eats through at least 2% of Californians' almonds before they can even reach our supermarket shelves. Last year, that percentage nearly doubled. While that may seem like a small amount, it becomes troubling when you consider the size and impact of the state's almond industry. California produces 80% of the world's almonds, most of which are harvested here in the valley. To fight this pest, researchers are developing new tactics like exposing the navel orangeworm to radiation. David Haviland is a Kern County farm advisor with the UC Cooperative Extension and is working on this research. He joined our host, Elizabeth Arkalian, for a conversation.
Navel orangeworm is the absolute arch nemesis of pistachio and almond growers both. It's a worm that literally the adult lays its egg on the nut. The worm hatches, penetrates into the kernel, and eats the kernel. And farmers are in the business of selling kernels. That's what we want to eat every day is an almond. And so a pest that literally attacks the sellable part of the crop is pretty devastating to the industry.
Okay, a recent report from the LA Times in which you're quoted says that hotter temperatures are making this navel orangeworm pest worse for almond growers. Can you tell us how so?
Yeah, so insect development is based on temperature. If you have two insects born on the same day, you put one in the refrigerator, you put one in a tropical environment, and the two will become adults at different times. Okay, so it's temperature based. So anytime you have really hot summers, they develop faster. That means you get more generations per year and you get more pressure from that pest in the crop. So weather from year to year is absolutely something that farmers are watching to see how bad of a pest this pest will be.
So how big of a problem is this for almond growers, and what's at stake if this pest gets worse?
So on average, year after year, about 2% of the almonds that are harvested have worm damage. And that's after processing. There's an assumption that there's another couple percent in the field that never makes it to the processor. So if you can imagine that there's over 1 million acres of almonds in California, and if you imagine they're producing 1,500 to 2,000 pounds per acre, worth a couple dollars a pound, when you add that all up and think that 4% of all of that is being eaten by worms, that is just, it's tens and tens, if not, hundreds of millions of dollars when you add this up over time.
So in terms of solutions, there is a pesticide to address this, or growers can manually remove what I believe are what you call mummies, or those empty holes that the bug has gotten into, the pest has gotten into. Is that right?
Sort of. Yeah, you're on the right track. So first of all, there isn't a solution. There's a group of different things or a program that can be put together that reduces damage. And what you're referring to is called sanitation. So the worms, as I said earlier, are only in the nuts. So in the winter, that's how they spend the winter. So if you can go in the winter, remove any nuts that were left over from the previous year and completely destroy them, then you've gotten rid of all the worms. Second, pesticides are an option. They do help, but obviously pesticides are a last resort for farmers. They don't want to do that unless they absolutely have to. There's another technique called mating disruption that growers use, which is putting a pheromone out in the field. And you can imagine if the whole field smells like a pheromone, it's the way the male finds a female, then the male can't actually find her. And if they don't mate, she doesn't make any babies. So all of that, plus harvesting as early as possible, is sort of the industry standard practice. Growers do 2, if not 3, if not all 4 of those in most fields every year. And despite all that, still have about 2% of their nuts damaged. So that's the status quo. That's what we're trying to improve on.
And researchers are currently studying a new technique that would actually sterilize the navel orangeworm. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's the direction for the new innovation. So what's happening there is there's techniques that have been developed to mass produce insects. We're talking millions per day, and then irradiate them to sterilize them, and specifically the males. And then you would ship those to California, fly them over the tops of the crops, release them from airplanes, and then all of these males would be flying around that are basically sterile. So anytime a sterile male mates with a female that's in the field, she's not going to produce any viable offspring. So this is potentially a way to control navel orangeworm without them being born in the first place.
So just to reiterate, this technique is being tested out. It's not technically in operation yet on a big scale?
Yeah, that's correct. So anytime you have a new technology, there's a lot of hurdles you have to go over. And some of those are, can you actually mass produce the insect? How do you do that? How do you keep them healthy? How do you irradiate them? Obviously, if you don't use enough radiation, they are viable. If you use too much, you're going to harm them. How do you ship them? How do you release them? How many do you have to release? So all those kinds of questions are the things that are being answered right now. And there have been a lot of successes with what you might call the initial steps. At the same time, there are still several more steps that we would need to go through before this is something that any farmer in the state could use year in and year out.
And as we touched on a little bit earlier, this extreme heat has worsened this navel orangeworm issue, but you did share in the LA Times that there is a silver lining. What was that?
So increased temperatures certainly impact how fast navel orangeworm develops, but it also impacts the speed that all of the things that eat navel orangeworm develop. So one of the things farmers always want to use is biological control. And increased temperatures, while they're not desirable, wouldn't necessarily be catastrophic because they're influencing the entire system, the good bugs and the bad bugs, and when harvest occurs, and so on. So predicting long-term effects of temperature changes, not so sure there. Nevertheless, we're always looking for those effects and certainly concerned about what they could become.
That was KVPR's Elizabeth Arkalian speaking with David Haviland. He's a Kern County Farm Advisor with the UC Cooperative Extension. And that does it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback or a story idea, we'd love to hear from you. Just email us at podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by me, Jonathan Linden, and KVPR, with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.